So this was the beginning of the students' food chain lesson. It was their week 3 lesson with me, so they'd learnt quite a bit beforehand, and the start of this lesson was revising a few different things that they had learnt. So this first one is a video that they watched. I'll go quickly show you a little bit of it. It really just told them what they needed to know and what they've been learning in the past few weeks. And this lady talks about the start of the food chain to the end of the food chain. The students then went and looked at a few different interactive sites. So they looked at this one, working on the food chain, and they went through as a class and could come up and interact with the board. Obviously, that's not going to happen today because I'm not on an interactive whiteboard, but they would come up and choose this little arrow down here and read these little blurbs about it. And it really just retold them what they'd already been learning and just made sure that it was activating their prior knowledge as well. They really enjoyed this interactive game because of the moving characters. They were very engaged. Okay, so that one goes on for a little bit longer, and with the class would stop and talk about and explore a little bit further into specific things. The students then had a look at this one, so they could come up to the interactive whiteboard and choose on the woodland, the seashore, or the river, whatever they would like to go into, whatever habitat they'd like to explore. And then they would work as a class on trying to complete their food chain from the producer down the bottom to all of the consumers that were involved in the right order. Now, this worked really well because one student would be chosen at a time and they would come in and drag the producer in and read a little bit about it and why it might have been the producer. So they really enjoyed this because they could come out of their seats, come up, and with their fingers just drag it into the right spot, whichever one they believed would come next. Okay. So then the lesson continued, and then they looked at an ecosystems diary and they explored this entry here. So this entry had a few different animals involved in it, and they had to pick out the animals and create their own food chain. So it was a really difficult task for a few of them. Some of them could not participate in this task purely because it was a little bit difficult. So instead, for these students, because they're in learning support, I found a few other games for them to explore. And like this one, they would do a few examples, and instead of making the food chain themselves and having to decode a text, they would look at these animals and see which they think would come first based on what they've been learning in class. They had another game as well that would go through a few questions, and I looked at this as a test for them, a mini test. So I got their answers off of them afterwards, and they looked at the question and then dragged which one they believed would come first in that food chain. Okay, these students really, really enjoyed these games, and after this lesson, they begged and begged me to keep doing it in further lessons. So because they were so engaged, they were able to learn what they were supposed to learn. If I had given them the same task as the other students, they probably wouldn't have grasped the concept just